Welcome to my Ultra Noob's Guide to Path of Building. The reason why it's an Ultra Noob is because I'm an Ultra Noob. I am new to Path of Exile in general. I've never used Path of Building before. I looked up some beginner guides for Path of Building, and even those beginner guides were a little bit too high level for me, and so I really needed someone to break it down and go that next level below, Ultra Noob. So I had my Twitch chat explain to me how to use this application. I'm going to pass that knowledge onto you so you can get rolling with Path of Building and hopefully bump up your DPS. New year, new me, and I feel like with every Manscaped sponsor, I'm getting a little bit more respectful, and you too can tidy up both upstairs and downstairs with Manscaped's Beard and Balls bundle. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra has two interchangeable blades. The skin-safe trimmer blade designed to gently and efficiently trim that winter forest canopy with longer, wider, rounded teeth, while the foil blade completely removes the forest for that sleek finish. And like any adventure into a tangled forest, you need a spotlight. The LED spotlight lets you see exactly what's going on, and if 2025 brings you travel, the travel lock keeps everything secure. Once you finish downstairs, the beard hedger can sculpt and style your face with the built-in zoom wheel with 20 length options. Both the beard hedger and the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra are waterproof for easy trimming in the shower or cleaning, with 60 minutes of runtime on a single charge, plenty of time to tame any situation. Try the Beard and Balls bundle risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee and use promo code Myelin to get 20% off and free international shipping at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with promo code Myelin. First things first, what is Path of Building? Path of Building is a third-party application. I'll leave a link down below to where you can download it, because you do need to download the right one, because there's a Path of Building for Path of Exile 1, and there's a Path of Building for Path of Exile 2, so we want that one. And what it does is it simulates Path of Exile 2, and you can input your character, their skill tree, their skills, to see how much damage you are doing and your survivability, and you can change lots of variables to give you better information about your build, so you can min-max. If you go to the very top left-hand corner, there's an import, export, build button. If you have a click on that, unfortunately, at the time of recording this video, this character import button is not yet available. If you're watching this in the future, you could probably skip half of this video, because you should be able to search for your character and it will just put all of your information into Path of Building. All the nodes you've selected, all the items you're wearing, all that kind of thing. As of right now, you have to do this manually, and that's also what I'm going to show you, how to manually put your build in here, because you pretty much can't do anything until you put a build into it. So you can put your build into it, which I'm going to show you. The other reason you might be using it is you might be following along of a content creator and they've given you their build, and you can input their build in this screen as well. Once again, top left-hand corner, import, export, build, and then they'll give you a URL in their description, likely of their YouTube video. You paste it into here and you import, and that will give you all that information. Okay, once I've shown you how to input your character into Path of Building, there are three areas of optimization I'm going to cover. The first is how to optimize your passive skill tree. There are multiple tools in here, such as making multiple passive skill trees and comparing them, or just simply unsocketing nodes and putting them somewhere else and checking your DPS, or using the power report, which actually tells you which is the most efficient pathway to take to increase your damage. And I'll also cover anointments. If you are new to Path of Exile, which you should be if you're watching this video, you may not be aware that on your passive skill tree, you can have a look at notables, which are these looking nodes. They're called notables. And if you press the Alt button on these, you'll see that there's little symbols at the top, and these are distilled emotions: guilt, disgust, greed, in that order. And what that allows you to do is actually place them onto an amulet. So I have preemptive strike on this amulet without actually pathing to that part in my passive skill tree. As you can see, it's not there. So what you could use Path of Building for when it comes to your passive skill tree is theorycraft. Is it worth me putting this anointment on my amulet, and will it actually make my DPS go up? Because some of these things, you know, guilt, disgust, greed, some of these things cost a lot of money, and so you can see if that's going to be worth it before you invest in it. So that's the first thing, your passive skill tree, how you might want to optimize that. The second area of optimization is going to be your skills and your support gems. Obviously, there is a DPS feature in the game. Sometimes this is not accurate, and to be honest, Path of Building is also in its early stages for Path of Exile 2, so some of it's also not accurate, but you do have more utility in Path of Building to try to get an accurate DPS number. Good example might be something like Ice Bite, which says attacks gain 35% of damage as cold damage on freezing an enemy with support skills. Now, if I actually put this on or off, my DPS doesn't change for Ice Strike. So it's currently at 44,895, and you can see it's not increasing the DPS at all. In Path of Building, we can tell the program to assume that we've frozen an enemy and to add that damage to it so we can do a better comparison. So that's step 2. We can optimize our skills, our support gems to see how we get the most damage. And the third area of optimization is going to be looking at your gear. It has become a little bit easier since the most recent update because you can swap in different runes now. It does destroy the rune that's already in there, but you can do this in Path of Building too. You can freely pop in whatever rune you want into your gear to see how that's going to impact your DPS and what's best for you to go with. The other really, probably the most important thing about using Path of Building is you can have a look on the trade website, and if you want to purchase something, and before you purchase it for a really big cost, you can grab that item, you can put it in Path of Building and actually check how much is going to increase your damage or your survivability before you make a purchase. So that's the 3 areas of optimization: the passive skill tree, your skills and support gems, and also your weapons and armor. Okay, let's get your character into Path of Building. The first things first is you need to go up to the very top and select your class. I'm not playing with a ranger, so I select monk because I'm on the monk class. Then, depending on where you are in the game, if you've done your ascendancy, you want to choose your ascendancy. So I am an invoker monk, so I'm going to select that too. And you'll see now that we have the invoker ascendancy points highlighted over here, and we're an invoker monk down here. I then also leave on auto. This is to do with your level. As you select a node, it's going to increase your level, just like it happens in the game, right? You level up, you get a node, you put it in your passive skill tree. The reason why this is useful to leave on auto is, so for myself, my invoker is a level 90 invoker. So I can make sure I spend the right amount of points and don't go above level 90 for my current build, because I won't actually have those points yet. When I get to level 91, I can go up to level 91. If you accidentally like bump this up, you'll see it changes to manual here, and you can just reset that back to auto. And now we just got to go through and actually put in our tree into this program. So I have a look on my passive skill tree, open up my passive skill tree, and just manually go through here and select all the nodes that I have selected. So even starting with our ascendancy, I flip back over. So my ascendancy is, and it's up here. I'll go this one, and then down here, and then here, and then just double check. And you just have to go through and do that for everything until that feature is available where we can input our characters into the program. The only other thing that can help speed this along as well is when we're selecting our like strength and intelligence dexterity nodes. It does tell you this as a shortcut. So let's say, well, the other thing you can do is just kind of click where you want to go, and it will give you the most efficient path. But sometimes that's not always correct. So for example, I believe I'm on this path here. I'm going to select all these nodes, and then I think I went up through here. And then when we get to allocating here, we've got a quick explanation how you can do this a little bit quicker. It says press 1 for intelligence, 2 for strength, or 3 for dexterity, and right click to do the same thing on another node. So let's say I want this to be strength, and I would recommend just making sure all these are the same. So that one is a strength one, and then the next one is a dexterity. But this one here is a strength, and so I can right click and that will apply strength because the one I applied previously is strength. And what did I say? 3 for dexterity. So if I hold number 3 and then left click, it will just automatically apply dexterity. You'll get very quick at doing this. Hold down 1, it applies intellect. Hold down 2, it applies strength. Right click and it will apply the previous one. So you got to go through your skill tree and basically match it all up. If you have jewels in your passive skill tree, you got to do something a little bit different to get it into the program, which I'm going to show you right now, because this is where we want to input all of our armor and weapons. So you go to the very top left-hand side of the screen, look at items, click on items. Now we need to put everything that we're wearing into this screen and also the jewels that we have in our passive skill tree. So open up Path of Exile 2, go to your inventory, and just hover over the item you want to place into the program. Control C, copy, go back to Path of Building, go to the very right hand side box here and just go Control V, and it will literally paste that item into the program with all the runes it has on it, all the modifiers it has on it, and be ready to roll. You press add to build, that will transfer that item into like a short list here into the middle panel. And then on the left hand panel, this is what you want to have equipped. So I am using that weapon, the Expert Long Quarterstaff with Self Spell. Now, let's say I want to also grab this weapon here to check out. Control C, go back to Path of Building, right hand side, Control V, add to build, and now it's in this short list version here. However, you can see it currently says that it's being unused because it's not allocated on the left hand side here. So this left hand panel is what you are using for your damage. So if I want to switch to that other quarterstaff, which is the Morbid Song, I just drop this down, select Morbid Song. Now you might also do this for your secondary weapon. I might want to have a secondary weapon in there and equipped on that thing there. And that all we need to do is paste it into the right hand side. It will go shortlisted into the middle panel and then select it over here. Now we need to do the same thing for everything. Our helmet, our body armor, gloves, boots, amulets, all that kind of stuff will transfer over. The thing that we might not, is not immediately obvious, is our jewels. So we want to go back over to our passive skill tree, open up the passive skill tree, press I. We want to I think you need to unsock it. Maybe you don't need to unsock it. Hold on, let's just try. Just hover over this, Control C on the jewel, go back to passive, back to Path of Building, right hand side, Control V. Okay, don't need to unsock it. And there is our jewel in our passive skill tree. We add this to our build, and then we're going to go down to our passive skill tree. Now, right now, I can't add it because I don't have any jewel sockets on my skill tree because I actually haven't finished doing this yet. So let's just find where a jewel socket is. So here we go. So I've made a path to this one here. I go back now to my items, and you'll see now I have the ability to socket. On socket 1, I can put in that jewel. And it will be in there on our passive skill tree now. So that is step 2. Open your inventory, Control C, Control V, everything that you're wearing, your rings, your body armor, your helmet, your weapons, your amulets, and your jewels. Paste them into Path of Building, and then make sure on the very left-hand panel, everything is equipped that you should be using for your damage. The next thing we need to do is put in our skills and our support gems into the program itself. What you want to do is go up to the very top left-hand corner, click on skills. Now it does say you can Control C and Control V your skill or your socketed groups into here. Very similar to how you did the items, that you should be able to just hover over this, Control C, and it should take everything and plop it in there. However, it doesn't seem to work at this stage, so you're gonna have to manually put in your skills and your support gems. You click on new, this adds a new skill. Now the very first line here is the name of the skill. So in this case, I wanna have a look at Ice Strike. So I put in Ice Strike. Ice Strike, cool. Now, it's very, very important that you get your level right and your quality right, because this will change a bunch of your DPS. So your level, open up here. My Ice Strike is actually only on level 19. So I go back and I drop this down to level 19. I then have a look at the quality of Ice Strike. So this has a 20% quality. So I want to make sure that my quality in here is all the way up to 20%. And I just click on this until we get to 20%. Cool. The count number is for things, well, it tells you what it's for. It to be used with totems, minions, shotgunning of projectiles, multi-hit projectiles, etc. The way to think about this is if it's a single cast, but there's multiple things that come out of it, you can bump up the count. I am not familiar with a lot of those skills because I've been playing Invoker Monk, but I think a basic example would be like minions. Like, how many minions are you making? You want to make sure that you have the correct amount of minions on that count number there. Right. The next thing is, and it's not quite obvious, so you put in the skill gem first, and then these lines underneath are going to be your support gem items. So I go back and have a look and say I've got martial tempo on my eye strike. I then type in martial tempo. There it is there. And now that is supporting eye strike. Once you've inputted all your skills and your support gems, the next thing you want to consider is what you want to include in your full DPS. So for example, for my monk, when I'm doing damage against a boss, I've charged my staff. So I have charge staff on. So I get charge staff. I drop a bell. I drop the Tempest bell. And then I flicker strike onto that bell to do damage. So they're my 3 main skills that I use to do damage against a boss. So whatever skills you're using and what you want to think about for like boss damage, you want to tick this thing at the top. It says include in full DPS. And what that will do, it will add up all the totals of those skills and how much damage you're doing to give you like a full DPS value. So when I drop the bell and I use charge staff and I flicker, what's my total number that's happening? Now, for me, I'm not putting on Herald of Ice or Herald of Thunder as part of my DPS because they don't proc when I'm doing boss damage. Now, do take a lot of this with a grain of salt. I think there are some things that need to be fixed in the program to get these numbers a bit more accurate. Like, for example, this Tempest Bell damage here is very low. I'm assuming that is just the impact of the Tempest Bell and not all the shockwaves from Tempest Bell, right? But I would probably get into a habit of thinking about what skills you rotate through for your DPS, and that is what you can tick include in full DPS, and stuff that are buffs or other things that aren't going to be proccing, you can just not include them. Okay, and the last thing we need to do before we can start optimizing is click on configuration in the top left-hand corner. So on configuration, starting on the very right-hand panel, this is your quest rewards. So Act 1 normal, clear fell, this gives you plus 10% to cold resistance. And what this means is, if you want to check if you've done it, open up your map, go to the correct act. So the first 3 acts is normal, the next 3 acts are cruel. Then have a look, this was in clear fell. So here's clear fell, and this boss here, you can see, gives me plus 10% to cold resistance. So I've got that boss, it's done. I have the plus 10 to cold resistance. So if I click that, it will add that plus 10 cold resistance to Path of Building, so it's included. These are all your quest rewards. So if you've done every boss, every optional boss in the game, you've got all your rewards, just tick all of these. There are some that are, you have to choose which option you selected in the game, so you have to go and have a look at which option you put in the game and put that in there too. I haven't done mine yet, very naughty. Right, so go through, depending on where you are in the campaign, and select which bosses you've defeated, and this will show you which buffs you've got. Moving along to the second lot of panels, starting with the skill options, you need to have some understanding of your build here to make sure you select the right thing. For example, mine has Wind Dancer and the number of Wind Dancer stacks on it. And if I have a look at my Wind Dancer, which is a defensive buff that I use, here's a Wind Dancer, and I have a look at how many stacks. I actually have 4 maximum stacks. It's actually usually only 3, but I actually improve the quality to 20%, gives me an extra stack. So I actually get 4 stacks total. So depending on what you have equipped, you might need to change some things in the skill options and make sure they represent what you have. And this is essentially telling the game, or telling Path of Building, the game, that I want to do all the calculations with 4 stacks of Wind Dancer. Okay. The next panel is the enemy stats, and this is where a lot of people talk about how you might want to inflate numbers, or to be careful of people inflating numbers, because this is the enemy's health and resistances and the calculations you're doing for that. So if you do, is the enemy a boss? You say, no, it's just a standard enemy. It's going to really bump up how much damage you're doing because standard enemies have less resistances and less health. So I think in general, my understanding of this is the kind of gold standard is to put it on Guardian and Pinnacle Boss for the most sort of realistic estimate of the damage that you might be doing. I guess once you get more experience, you can start playing around with this section a little bit more, but I think for the moment, this is probably fine just to put it on Guardian and pinnacle bosses. Even though for myself, like my build is probably, it's actually not very good at boss damage, I'm still using this as, you know, a way to compare my results. And then the last column is really important. This is where it comes down to understanding your build quite well. So for example, like my build does use power charges. So I want to tick, do you use power charges? Yes, I want to have that in there. I also need to know how many power charges I have. I know that I can generate 6 power charges. Because power charges in this build, they impact how much damage you do, how many times you can flicker strike, all that kind of stuff. So I want to make sure that this represents my build. There are other nodes that might be giving you buffs. Like for example, like have you crit recently? So I might have a node that says, when I crit recently, I get another floozy doozy Watson, so I get extra crit damage, okay? So this is saying, do I want to include that in the calculation? Do I want to assume that I've always crit recently and get all those buffs, or do I not want to do that? Another example is the enemy on full life? I have some things in my passive tree that require the enemy to be on full life. Very good for ad clear, not very good for boss damage. So understanding that if I tick this, I'm going to see the numbers go up quite a lot, but it's probably only going to apply to small enemies that are always on full life when I flicker, and it's not really going to apply to my boss damage when they're not on full life, and I take a little bit of setup to get my build going. Cool. Enemy distance is also something to watch out for, because if you have a look at some of your skills, so for example, my flicker strike has something that has close combat, and because I'm always in their face when I punch them, I am in close combat range, and so I want the damage calculations to include the 25% that I get from that. The idea is when you go through your configuration, this is kind of what you're trying to set this up for what's going to be happening most of the time. Yeah, I'm pretty confident I'm always going to have power charges. I'm pretty confident that if I'm going to do a build just for small enemies, I want to slam small enemies, you know, in a breach, that they're going to be on full life. So I'm going to tick that too. You don't want to be too dramatic here too, because it might really inflate how effective your build is. So you want to be pretty reasonable with what boxes you tick. Another thing you can do to check some of your configurations is head back over to your skills, clicking on the top left-hand corner. Whatever skill you want to check, make sure it's selected under your main skill. So, you know, if I put Ice Strike here, this is giving me the damage, the average damage for Ice Strike. If I click on Flicker Strike, this is going to be average damage for Flicker Strike, and its crit chance and its crit multiplier, all those kind of things. And what you can do is you can turn on and off your supports and just have a look to see if your damage is going up or down. This is going to give you an indication if the support is being applied correctly. There's probably 2 reasons why the support gem is either being applied or not being applied. One, it could be an issue with the program because it's still in its early stages, might not be coded correctly, might not be applying. Or 2, you might not have the right configuration on. So for example, close combat, I want to make sure that it's applying that 25% damage buff if I'm 1 meter from an enemy. I'm going to toggle this on and off. I'm currently at 18,980. I turn this off and it drops down to 15,000. Cool. Pretty confident the calculation is including close combat. If I have a look at momentum, which requires me to travel 2 meters using the skill, and then I get a 40% damage buff. If I tick this on and off, I'm not seeing a change in my damage. So, and I don't think there is then I would go and have a look, and I don't think there's a configuration in here that I could tick that I've traveled a couple meters before applying it. So this doesn't seem like it's actually applying my damage correctly. But there might be other things in here that you don't have the configuration turned on for. Like another example would be Ice Strike. So if I have a look at my Ice Strike, I make sure I choose my main skill to be Ice Strike. So my damage is 11,793. And I have a look at Ice Bite, which requires you to freeze an enemy before you get the damage buff. And I just toggle this on and off. You'll see that the damage already goes down and it goes back up. So the path of building is already applying Ice Bite, assuming that the enemy has been frozen and you've got this damage buff. So I actually don't need to tick, is the enemy frozen? I actually don't need to put that on. It's already applying that to my DPS. So you can double check some of your configurations by heading over to your skills and then toggling them on and off and seeing if the damage goes up, then checking if there's a configuration, and if there's no configuration that will help that skill out, well then it might just be an issue with the program. Okay, so you're finally ready to start optimizing now, so let's have a look at the passive skill tree. The first thing I would recommend is coming down to the very bottom and duplicating your passive skill tree, so you can have one where you muck around in and you just keep changing everything, and one that is what your current build is. So click on the drop down menu here and then manage trees. And I'm just going to copy my default. This is what my build is in the game. I'm going to copy this, rename it. I'm just going to name it YouTube so I don't get confused. It's for the YouTube video, and save. Cool. And done. Now when I come back down to the bottom left-hand corner, I can click on my YouTube passive skill tree and I can start allocating things elsewhere. So for example, let's say I want to get Killer Instinct. I'm going to need 3 nodes to get there. Remember, I'm on level 90 at the moment, and my monk is on level 90. So if I just click these, it will go up to level 93. So I'll be like, hey, okay, next 3 points this is where it's going. But let's say I want to stay at level 90. I'm going to have to unallocate some nodes elsewhere. So I might unallocate 1 node from here, 1 node from here, and 1 node from here. Right, so I've saved 3 nodes and I've put them onto here. And now I'm still at level 90. Now, what I should have done before I did that is check what my damage was. So we come over to the main skill and we select our skill that we want to check our damage for. Flicker Strike. Let's just backtrack a bit. Let's just undo this again. Let's put these back on. I'll show you how to shortcut all this. Okay, so that's what it was before. My damage is 18,980. All right, and then I'm going to undo these and place on here. And now my damage has gone up to 19,254. So I could redistribute my passive skill points just like that and realize that this was going to give me a little bit of extra damage for what I've currently got. What I can also do then is then compare. So I've got my tree that I've now modified. Again, at the very bottom, I click on compare. I want to compare it to my default. So this will now show me the nodes that I've unallocated here and where I've placed them. And then I've placed them over here. So you can do that comparison. This is pretty handy when you want to go back into Path of Exile and you've made some changes. You now can have a look at your passive skill tree and see which nodes you've unallocated here and where they're going. So that's a nice little feature to be able to compare them. But there is a more precise way to work out where you should be going, and that is with the power report. So you come down to the very bottom and you click on Show Node Power. And this does take a little bit of time to generate, but what it is doing is it's calculating which direction you should go and the quickest way to get there for the biggest bump in damage, which is in red, or blue for defensive perks. Once I've clicked Show Node Power, I want to come over here. It says offense and defense. So this is why it's showing red and blue, the red being the offense, the defense being blue. But we can then select either full DPS or combined DPS. Full DPS is just going to be those skills that you've ticked the full DPS box. And please correct me if I'm wrong if you're a veteran PoE player. I believe combined DPS will be all of your skills, like taking into consideration all of your skills, your dot damages and all those kind of things. I'm pretty sure I was recommended to do combined DPS. We click on combined DPS and then we click Show Power Report. Now this is going to take a little bit of time to generate, but it's essentially going to give us the best path to take to get the biggest impact for our damage, and it's going to show it down here in the bottom left-hand corner. Okay, once the power report has been generated, you can see it starts providing recommendations based on the best power bump you can get. So the first recommendation is First Approach, has a combined DPS, 5 points, and a per point value. Now, I believe this per point value is, if you track to First Approach, if you click on First Approach, okay, so First Approach is here, right? We zoom out, and it says it's 5 points to get there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, once I complete that journey, it's saying that our per point value is 2,200. So it's saying we're actually getting, if we invest those 5 points, we're actually getting quite a lot of damage per point by the time we get to that end of First Approach. Cool. There are other recommendations in there too. And like I said before, you got to make sure this still suits your build and your configurations. Because if we have a look at what the recommendation is for First Approach, it actually says 50% increase in critical hit chance against enemies on full life. So that means we would have to make sure, if we want to see a change here, that we have enemies on full life in our configuration. So now what we can do is think about how we could get to first approach if we want to do that, and how we might make that build work. We need 5 extra points. So let's get off Killer Instinct and see if we can go to first approach instead. We've got 1. Oh, yeah, okay, whatever. Allocates 2. You do have to be careful what these nodes here you allocate. You don't want to make sure that you lose your attributes you need to like wield the weapon or something. So just make sure that you're reallocating as they were previously and you're not losing attribute points. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm at level 91 now. So now I know I need to take it off from somewhere else before I can get there or make it a goal. Now, I then thought, well, I'm using a bit of stuff here that maybe this is a bit of a waste, and I may be able to, if I'm going towards first approach, I might be able to make a shortcut through here and save some points. And what I prepared earlier, my min-max build, I'm at level 90. I've got first approach, and I've still got subterfuge mask, which I'm using for part of my defensive builds. So that's a nice example. And as you can see, now my damage is at 28,000, up from 19,000. Pretty huge jump considering I haven't gone up any levels. I've just redistributed the points that I do have to be more effective. The other ways you might want to optimize your passive skill tree is having a look at your jewels and even your anoints. So the way that you need to have a look at jewels is you need to add a jewel to your items before you can socket it into Path of Building. So you go up top left-hand corner, click on items, and you need to dump it in here. Just in case you've skipped to this part of the video, I'll just show you how to do this. So if you have a jewel in your inventory, like this one here, I just hover over it, Control C, open up Path of Building, Control V, it gets pasted in here. We then add to build. It's gonna get put into our middle panel here. And then we go over to the left-hand side, and this shows us on the map where it's gonna get socketed, and we select that jewel and it'll get socketed in, okay? Currently, I'm just gonna get rid of that because that's a double up because it's just an example. But what if you want to buy one off the trade website and you wanna see if it's gonna be worth the juice? So for example, I'll go to pathofexile.com/trade 2. I've got some jewels here. They've got big crit chance on it and big crit damage on it. And they're gonna cost me 2 divine orbs. So I wanna check how big is this boost in damage. Now, unfortunately, there is no copy paste function yet for the Path of Exile 2 trading system. In the future, there should be a little copy paste down here where you can just copy it and you can paste it in the Path of Building and away you go. But for the moment, you actually manually input it into Path of Building. So we got 15% and 12% crit damage as a sapphire. Okay, so we can bring this open. We click on craft item. We want to craft a rare jewel and it's a sapphire base. We create, and then we can select the prefixes or suffixes. So for crit, it's going to be on the suffix. We just type in crit and we have our crit chance there. And we have a slider to increase how much it was. So we just go back and check. I think it was max at 15%. So we slide this all the way to the max. It is now on 15% crit chance. And we have the crit bonus on there as well. So we look at crit bonus, have a look at what it was. So it was 12%. Slide this to 12%. Okay, and then we would put in the other attributes too. We add to build. This gets put into our center column, and then now I'll replace one of my sockets with the one I just added, which is the sapphire. New item sapphire. Cool. And we have a look if our damage has now changed. The other thing you can do to optimize your passive skill tree is having a look at anointing your amulets. So like I mentioned before, you can anoint notables, which are nodes looking like this, onto an amulet without having to path there. So you can grab this node, for my case, I did preemptive strike, and you can place it onto an amulet. So I get the benefits of preemptive strike without having to go there. And obviously there's a pretty big passive skill tree, so you might want to work out what you should anoint. And I just did this because it kind of looked good, and I might want to know if it's the best thing I have on. So I'm going to find my amulet in the center panel. I'm going to drag it and drop it over the right hand side. And this is going to allow me to edit like a new version of it. I double click on it. And then now you can see I can edit it, I can corrupt it, I can add modifiers, or I can anoint it. So I'm going to click on anoint, And then I get the full list of anoints here. I can sort by name. I can sort by DPS. I can sort by combined DPS, whatever. I can then apply a new anoint to it. Acceleration. Don't know if that's going to do anything. Anoint acceleration. Boom. It's now on here. I now click add to build. Stop Myelin from the future here. I just picked this up in editing. You don't necessarily have to add everything to your build. If you just want a quick glance if something is better, you can just look at this bottom box here. And this says equipping this item in amulet will give you the following stats, and it's replacing my current amulet. So you just check that it's replacing the thing you want it to replace. And then everything in red is obviously a negative, everything in green is a positive. So you can see here it's saying that I'm actually losing average damage, about 13% I'm losing. I'm gaining some attack rate. I'm losing 100% crit multiplier. It's costing me more mana. I'm gaining some movement speed, and I'm losing damage over full DPS. So if I just want a quick glance so that I can just look at these stats and go, yep, that's not for me, and leave it at that. You can then do what I'm going to suggest now in the actual build. And I do this pretty much the long way, where I'm adding it to the build and then checking my average damage over the top and any other stats I want to look into. But just a note, you can quickly glance at it with these stats as well. And I have a new amulet. Well, it's the same amulet with a different anointment on it. And then I can slot it in here. It's a bit hard because I didn't rename them. I have to find the right amulet. That's got the acceleration on it. Boom. There you go. Okay, let's talk about how you can optimize your gear now. Now, we kind of spoke about this with jewels and anointments. But they're a bit of a blend of gear and the passive skill tree. So for just the gear only, we do have a center panel here that lists all the unique items, and you can sort these via full DPS or combined DPS. Remember, full DPS is going to be the skills you just have ticked for full DPS. Combined DPS, I think, is just combining everything. It's going to take a little bit of time to sort that, but as a new player, it can be useful just to see what the game is recommending, and if there's any uniques in here that might be valuable. And this is being sorted by the highest DPS. So it's actually recommending the power tread hunting shoes, which I actually do have, because it's giving me an extra power charge, and it's also giving me critical damage per power charge, which is perfect for my build. So this might be something I want to look into, and if I can make it work out. That's the first thing. The second thing is you might just be finding loot on the ground, and you want to see if it's a better option for your build. Very similar to the first part of the video. You're just going to hover over anything in the game, Control C, go back to path of building, right hand side in the shared items, Control V, it will paste it in there. You click add to build, it will add it to the center panel here. And once it's in the center panel here, you can swap it in. So for example, I've just put Morbid Song in, and I'm currently on Glyph Pile. So I swap out Glyph Pile, I put in Morbid Song, and my damage is going to 17,000. And before it was on 28,000. Now I can put that one straight in the trash. Cool. What you're probably going to be looking to do though is before you purchase something off the trade website. So yeah, let's say I want to upgrade and get a new quarterstaff, and it's going to cost me 340 divine orbs. Better just make sure it's worth the investment. Unfortunately, there's no copy button here yet, so you're going to have to manually input this. I will show you very quickly again in case you skipped to this part of the video, but you click on craft item. It's a rare. I'm going to have to make a quarterstaff, which I think is called staff or war staff, question mark. Yep. And then we're going to check our base. So what's our base? An expert slicing quarterstaff. We look at expert slicing quarterstaff, and then we go create. And then now I got to manually punch in the runes it has, the prefixes it has, the suffixes it has. So just as a very quick example here, it has 235% increased physical damage as a prefix. So have a look at a prefix, and we start typing in physical damage. It's a percentage increased physical damage, and we slide this up to, doesn't even go up to 200, 178, 179. If you can't get the sliders to give you the right percentage increases or the right values, you can manually edit it. So in this case, I'm going to click on edit, has 179 increased phys damage, and it needs to be 235. I just change out the 235% increase in physical damage and save. And now the item will have 235% increased physical damage on it. You need to go through and make sure all the prefixes and suffixes are correct as per the trade website, the thing you might want to buy, until they give us a copy button. And then you can add to your build. And then once it's in the center console here, you can then slot it into your build on the left-hand side and see how it goes. The last thing you might want to do is optimize your skills and your support gems. And you have a look here, it says gem options, and you can sort gems by DPS and have that as combined DPS or full DPS. Remembering full DPS is just the ones you have ticked for include full DPS. And what that'll do is when you actually click down here for your next support gem, this will list them in order of highest DPS to lowest DPS. So for example, Hourglass is saying I should put Hourglass on Flicker Strike. It's going to give me a 41.4% increase in my average damage. Pretty good. However, you can't just tick all the top ones on here for a couple of reasons. Firstly, this is adding a 10-second cooldown. So I have to be happy if I put this on, I'm going to have a 10-second cooldown. And secondly, it does allow you to slot multiple support gems of the same name. So I actually already have Hourglass on my Tempest Bell, and it's recommending that I also put it on Flicker Strike, and the game won't allow that to actually happen. So you have to sort of consider that as well. However, this is a nice way to have a look at maybe any support gems you've missed, and I'm actually going to change some of my build based on these suggestions and then run it and see how it feels. Remember to also select your main skill that you want to really check the damage for up here. So I'm looking at Flicker Strike, having a look at the average damage, and you can tick and untick your support gems to see if they're being applied correctly. And there you have it. That's everything I know about Path of Building as a beginner that was taught to me, and hopefully that will make a difference in your builds and you can get into Path of Building right now and make some changes and hopefully bump up that DPS. Like to support the channel and cannot think of a comment, you can leave the word Path of Building. If I've got anything wrong, please let me know. I always learn everything from the comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.